This Chapter 6, finally, contains 4 quiz questions to test your understanding of these materials. We warn you that the questions involve numerous, very tedious calculations that we must set out in full detail to avoid misunderstandings or confusion. We acknowledge extensive reliance for this quiz on the works of Murad Chaudhry, and specifically on his Repo Handbook, a link to which can be found as usual in the course outline. Question 1. On January 5, 2000, ABC and XYZ wish to enter into a classic sterling repo, with ABC quoting a bid offer price for 1 month for general collateral of 5/9/16, 5.5. XYZ lifts the offer, and the parties agree to deal £50 million for 1 month, with the collateral being the 5% UK Treasury note due 2004, trading at a clean price of 95.25. The coupon payment dates for this security are June 7 and December 7, and it pays interest under an actual convention. The two parties also agree that the deal amount will be £50 million rather than the face amount of the bonds delivered. What is the dirty price of the securities subject to the repo, and what is the repurchase price of the second leg, defining this to include accrued repo interest? You are instructed to ignore the gap between the trade date and the settlement date, and to treat both of these as January 5, 2000. You are also told to save you time that February 5 and 6 of 2000 were weekend days. Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 1. We must first calculate the accrued interest under the 5% UK Treasury. We note first that the interest period in question began on December 7, 1999, will end on June 7, 2000, and hence contains 183 actual days, given that 2000 is a leap year. We also note that between December 7, 1999 and January 5, 2000, there are 29 actual days. Therefore, relative to par, the accrued interest works out to this quantity here, or 0.3961749. Adding this to the bond clean price of 95.25 gives us a dirty price of 95.6461749. In turn, this means that the settlement amount for the sale of the UK Treasury notes will be this quantity here. Now we turn to the repo itself and observe first that since the trade commences on January 5 and that February 5 and 6 are weekend days, it will terminate on February 7. Between January 5 and February 7, 2000, there are 33 days. We also know that XYZ lifted the offer, which means it chose to be the buyer of the UK Treasuries in question and the investor of funds. ABC therefore will receive the lower of the 2 quoted rates on its funds, i.e. the 5.5% shown as the offer. The repo interest therefore works out to this quantity here, where you will note the actual 365 convention for UK money markets. Adding this repo interest to the initial sale price gives a final aggregate repurchase price, inclusive of repo interest, of this quantity here. So the correct answer is B as in boy. Question 2. Using the same data as in question 1, except as set forth in this question, assume that ABC Bank now wishes to enter into a sell buyback transaction with DEF Bank, under which ABC offers £30 million in face value of the 5.75% UK Treasuries due 2009, trading at a clean price of 100.79. The tenor of the sell buyback is 86 days and the rate agreed upon is 5%. Calculate the forward clean price at which the buyback transaction will be effected. Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 2. As with question 1, interest has accrued on the underlying bond for 29 days. But since the coupon this time is 5.75%, the accrued interest relative to par comes out to be this quantity here. Added to a clean price of 100.79, this gives rise to a dirty price of this quantity here. Applying this dirty price to the £30 million face value of the underlying securities causes the price under the sale leg of the sell buyback to be this quantity here. Turning to the interest implied under the transaction, we simply add a 5% rate to the above amount for 86 days on the basis of 365 days to get this quantity here. Therefore, the full purchase price under the buyback leg of the sell buyback comes to this quantity here. Dividing this amount by the 30 million face value of the underlying securities gives a forward dirty price equal to this quantity here. But the question asks for the forward clean price. So we must first calculate the accrued interest on this bond at the maturity date of the transaction. With 29 days elapsed initially, and another 86 days elapsing before maturity, the total number of days to accrue comes to 115. We remind you that the interest period in question contains 183 days since the year in question is a leap year. Thus, the accrued interest relative to par works out to this quantity here. And finally, we subtract this amount from the forward dirty price to obtain the forward clean price of 100.631664, as you can see from this calculation here. Thus, the correct answer is D as in David. Question 3. Using the same data as in question 1, except as set forth in this question, assume that ABC Bank now wishes to enter into a cross-currency repo transaction with QRS Bank, under which ABC Bank bids for $100 million of the 6.125% U.S. Treasury note due 2001 for 1 week, whose clean price is 99.59375 and whose coupon dates are June 30 and December 31 at a repo rate of 4.9% against sterling cash. ABC Bank requires a 2% margin this time, given the currency risk of the transaction. What is the full repurchase price in sterling i.e. including accrued repo interest, under the transaction, assuming the sterling dollar spot exchange rate is 1.63. You are instructed that US Treasuries use the same actual day count convention as UK Treasuries. Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 3. Again, we must first calculate the accrued interest under the 6.125% US Treasury. We note first that the interest period in question began on December 31, 1999, will end on June 30, 2000, and hence contains 182 actual days, given that 2000 is a leap year. We also note that between December 31, 1999 and January 5, 2000, there are 5 actual days. Therefore, relative to par, the accrued interest works out to this quantity here. Adding this to the bond clean price, 99.59375, gives a dirty price of 99.6778846. In turn, this means that the aggregate dirty price of the US Treasury notes is this quantity here. Given, however, the 2% margin on which ABC is insisting, the net settlement amount on day 1, if it were paid in US dollars, would be reduced to this quantity here. And given the spot FX rate of 163, this translates into an amount in sterling equal to this quantity here. Now we turn to the repo itself, which has a tenor of 7 days in this example. The repo interest therefore works out to this quantity here, where you will note again the actual 365 convention for UK money markets. You may have mistakenly thought the US money market convention of actual 360 applies here, given the currency of the collateral. But it should be obvious that what drives the day count of the repo itself is the currency of the funds that are borrowed. Adding this repo interest to the initial sale price gives a final aggregate repurchase price, inclusive of repo interest, equal to this quantity here. So the correct answer is A, as in apple. Question 4. A swap dealer enters a 5-year interest rate swap under which she pays 4% and receives LIBOR, currently at 2.5%. The dealer initially hedges herself by purchasing a 5-year government bond trading at par that pays a coupon of 3.85% and repos that bond at LIBOR minus 30 basis points. From an accrual perspective, what is her annualized profit under these two positions combined? Here are the 4 permissible answers. Solution to question 4. The diagram appearing now shows the swap desk first entering into the swap on the right-hand side, under which it pays 4% and receives initially 2.5%. Then the swap desk purchases the government bond, which yields 3.85%. And finally it repos this bond at LIBOR minus 30 basis points, i.e. at 2.2%, as you can see on this bottom left arrow. Netting out these cash flows leaves the swap desk earning an annualized profit of 15 basis points. So the correct answer is A, as in apple. This completes this chapter 6 and brings us to the end of part 2 and of the entire module on sale and repurchase agreement.